I've talked about this topic before here and as well as in a few other videos, but I think that I should compile all of my thoughts together into one video. So that's what this video is going to be. We're going to be talking about this, the nida form. For example, in expressions like 감사합니다 or sup-ni-da, you might see it at the end of an expression. This is a formal verb ending. So it's not going to be used in everyday speech. You're not going to be using it with your friends, most likely. But because of that, because it's formal, I see most beginners completely avoiding this form. Or when they do use it, they're using it incorrectly. So let's fix that. But first, thank you to the sponsor of this video, Billy VPN. No, all of my Patreon members and my channel supporters out there, thank you so much for your support and for helping me to make more videos, more free courses and lessons and all that stuff that I do here. You're the reason that I can pay my electricity bills, so thank you so much. If you're also interested in becoming one of my supporters, I'll have links to both my Patreon page as well as how you can join as a channel member in the video description box. Okay, so this topic has to do with what's known as politeness levels. And in fact, I made a full free course all about politeness levels in every situation, which I'll have a link to also in the video description box. And now this video is not going to be a full review of politeness levels. That would be a little bit longer, but we're only going to be talking about this form, which is nida with regular statements or nika with questions. So what is it? Well, again, nida is a formal ending. So if you were to take a verb, for example, 하다, and change it into this form, you'd get 합니다, right? If you were to take 먹다, to eat, you would get 먹습니다. The way it works is you attach nida if the verb stem ends with a vowel, and you attach sup-ni-da if it ends in a consonant. And if the verb stem ends with this letter, you simply remove it first. That's how it works. So it's really easy to use, but keep in mind, it's formal, so it should only be used in formal situations, right? Well, yes, but what counts as a formal situation? Pause this video for a second. Think of it. Think of two things that count as a formal situation. Okay, maybe you thought of like two situations or more, or maybe you couldn't think of any. I'm gonna make it even simpler for you. Any time that you want to sound extra respectful to the person you're talking with is a formal situation. So when might that be? Well, what if you're meeting a new person for the very first time and they're older than you? You'd want to sound extra respectful to them. Now, you wouldn't use this when you're meeting someone who looks to be the same age as you, right? Because you don't really need to be extra respectful to someone that you're just casually meeting. Nor would you need to be extra respectful if you're meeting a child or talking to a child, right? So what about if you're meeting a professor? Probably, yes. Now, once you've met that professor and maybe you become kind of close with them, you talk with them after class, would you still want to sound extra respectful toward them? Depends on your relationship, maybe not. So again, you'd use formal speech, this form, whenever you're talking to someone who you want to sound extra respectful toward. How about your boss? Well, maybe you work at a really large company and your boss is much older. You might always end up speaking like this to them. How about a smaller company where you know the boss a little bit better and you all go out to get lunch every once in a while? Maybe not. One of the places you're going to hear this the most, though, especially if you're just visiting Korea, is from service workers. You know how you might speak extra politely to someone if you're working as a service worker? Say you're working at a restaurant or you're working at a job where you have to deal with clients. It's like that. Like, please don't give me a bad review. I'm being extra respectful. Again, don't focus too much on the word formal. Instead, think about extra polite, extra respectful. And on the other hand, if you feel like sounding extra polite or extra respectful would be awkward, don't use it. For example, let me give you a little bit of a quiz. If you meet your favorite singer, are you going to use the nida ending when you finally get to meet them? Think about it. Okay. You have your answer. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong, but let's say you meet them in a business meeting. Your company gets to work with them. They sit down at the table across from you. You're going to present them with your marketing strategy for their new album. What do you think you're going to use to them? Would you use formal speech? Depends if you want to sound extra respectful or if you kind of want more of like a friendly tone to it. However, what if you meet that celebrity at a fan sign event? Are you going to speak to them the way you might speak to a customer in a restaurant if you're serving them? Probably not. And that's because the atmosphere is going to be more relaxed. Imagine it in English. Goodness, I am so honored to finally get to meet you for the first time. You are truly an inspiration to me. Maybe not. Now, there are certain expressions though where you can't escape using this nida form. And that's because these expressions are so commonly used that not using nida would actually sound a bit not polite enough, a bit casual even. I'll give you a few. 감사합니다. If you don't say 감사합니다 to a stranger, but let's say you use 감사해요, right? It still should be polite because it's the yo form, but it's not. Because it's not polite enough. You could say 감사해요 to someone who you're well acquainted with, who's a little bit older, you want to be polite, but you wouldn't use 감사해요 to someone who's a stranger or someone who you're just meeting because it sounds like you're not being respectful enough. 반갑습니다, nice to meet you. You would not say 반가워요 when you meet your boss. It sounds casual. Although it's not technically, you're gonna hear 반갑습니다 when you're introducing yourself. You might hear 반가워요 or 반가워 when you're meeting people who look to be similar ages as you, but not to other people who are older, not in any sort of polite situation. Here are a few more. This one should be a bit more obvious why, but if you're apologizing to someone who you're not close with, 죄송합니다. Don't say 죄송해요 to someone if you're in a service job to your client. You can say 죄송해요 to like someone who's your friend. 죄송해 is not really used though, that's a different subject, but 죄송합니다 is the default amount of politeness for an I'm sorry in any kind of polite situation. And the same goes for the expressions 잘 먹겠습니다 and 잘 먹었습니다. So before you eat your meal, 잘 먹겠습니다, literally I will eat well, or I will enjoy the food, or just thanks for the meal, as well as when you finish, 잘 먹었습니다, that was a good meal. These would also be used with the nida form unless you're trying to talk to just like say a friend. If someone else buys you a meal and you're not really close with them, it's always 잘 먹겠습니다 and 잘 먹었습니다, like that. So again, I recommend using these words with nida unless you're already well acquainted. And finally, one more place you're gonna see this used is in the Korean military. But you don't have to worry about that unless you're planning on joining the Korean military. And if you are, I actually had a lesson about that in my Master Politeness Levels course, all about how it's used in the military. If you'd like to learn more about politeness levels as well as this topic, I'll link that full course in the video description. Again, it's a full course, completely free. You can check it out right now. It's on my channel. So where else have you seen the nida form used, or where have you used it before yourself? Let me know in the comments below. It's nice to read your comments and you can share with other people about how you're using this form. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in another video. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.